The first words didn't strike me. They split through me like a blade dragged across an old scar, reopening everything I had tried to bury. "Get this beggar out." My father didn't soften his voice. He let it ring through the marble lobby of the Grand Orleans Hotel, as if humiliation were a performance he'd rehearsed. I stood in my tailored navy suit, spine locked in place, every nerve taut with the quiet rage I had spent decades containing. A security guard lingered beside me, close enough to intervene, too ashamed to make contact. My mother's eyes darted away, afraid, perhaps, that meeting mine would force her to acknowledge the rot beneath our carefully staged family unity. And Catherine, my brilliant, poisonous sister, wore that familiar little smirk, the one she cultivated in childhood. A smirk that always whispered, "I win. You lose. My name is Diane. I'm 35. And this is the moment when a rescinded invitation became the final spark in a long gestating fire of personal justice. I should have foreseen the betrayal. Families like ours don't heal. They lacquer over wounds, pretending civility is the same as love. For years, I had been their emergency fund, their problem solver, their difficult but reliable daughter, summoned whenever life demanded cash or competence. They dressed it up as loyalty. I recognized it for what it was, a quiet, relentless extortion, sweetened with guilt and wrapped in the illusion of kinship. What they never grasped was how literal my generosity had been. The grand ballroom where they basked in their own toast tonight. Rented through my company. The champagne cascade my mother claimed as heritage, charged to my accounts. Every flight for their adored out-of-town guests, routed through my corporate card. They swore the expenses flowed from my father's so-called retirement windfall, a myth he clung to as desperately as he clung to his pride. The truth was far smaller, an aging pension and a gold watch, polished, hollow, symbolic of a man who lived off illusions. I didn't yell. I didn't plead. Retribution, when crafted properly, requires restraint. The immediate satisfaction of a scene felt too trivial for what they'd earned. I lifted my chin, gave the security guard a calm nod, and walked out with the composed gait I'd learned to wear like armor. Through mirrored corridors, past the silent valet stand, down the concrete ramp to the car park of the Lantern District. Each step sharpened my thoughts, aligning them toward consequence. Only once I was sealed inside my car did the tremor come. A single, brief shake of my hands. Then, stillness. I opened my banking app. $7,200 banquet catering dissolved. $12,000 Catherine and Zachary's Maldives honeymoon wiped clean. $4,800 my mother's spa retreat eradicated. $52,000 beach condo installments pulled back into my Luna FC Holdings account. By the time I reached my street 20 minutes later, my phone erupted. My parents, Catherine, unknown numbers, an entire collapsing constellation of people who remembered my existence only when their privileges cracked. Then came the pounding. Violent, impatient, a demand masquerading as urgency. Through the peephole, Zachary. Face blotched red, shirt crooked, tie hanging like a noose he hadn't bothered to adjust. I slid the deadbolt with a soft, decisive click and retrieved a thick folder from the drawer. A file prepared 3 years ago, labelled in clean block letters. Contingency. You need to fix this. Now. No greeting, just panic braided with accusation. They cancelled the catering. The hotel locked the rooms. Our honeymoon tickets vanished while we were checking in. I leaned against the doorframe, letting the wood steady me, letting silence draw the blade thinner. Curious, I murmured, voice level and cool. It's almost like no one bothered to check who controlled the payments. He blinked, irritation collapsing into something closer to dread. You did this because they kicked you out. No, I said, feeling the cold clarity of long-awaited retribution settle into place. I did this because they forgot one rule. I lifted the folder, its weight both familiar and merciless. Don't bite the hand that feeds you, especially when that hand keeps every receipt. Zachary lingered outside my door, his face distorted through the rounded glass, as if he could read something salvageable in my expression. Remorse, maybe, doubt anything he could twist into leverage. But this house had long since expelled those softer instincts. What remained was a sharper inheritance, rage pared down to purpose. The folder in my hand was the culmination of that purpose. Not just documents, but a history. Signatures granting my company full control, termination clauses written in language. Even he couldn't pretend to misunderstand. Tabs arranged with the precision of someone who has spent years gathering evidence while everyone else assumed she wasn't watching. Every sheet was a ledger of the injuries they tried to bury under forced smiles and weekend brunch invitations. Retribution hadn't arrived suddenly. It had been maturing in silence. Tonight, it stepped into the light. I let the folder tap rhythmically against my palm, measured, final, the way a judge might test the weight of a ruling before delivering it. "I told them," I murmured more to myself than to him. "Treat me like a vault, and eventually I'll start charging for withdrawals." "You're attacking all of us," Zachary whispered harshly. His bravado faltered when a neighbour cracked open her door, pretending to collect a package while tracking every word. I gave him a slight, almost polite smile. "No, I'm eliminating liabilities before they drain the account." "They're your parents," he repeated, grasping the phrase like a shield full of holes. "They humiliated me in front of a crowd," I said softly, not raising my voice, because truth is most dangerous when delivered quietly. His silence thudded heavier than any accusation he could have thrown. Then he spun away, muttering threats. Attorneys, claims, escalation. But threats collapse when the other side holds the contracts, the logs and encrypted archives stored far beyond their reach. I closed the door carefully. Quiet retaliation always lands deeper than a slammed exit. In my office, the lamplight revealed a second folder waiting for me. Inheritance Audit. Phase 2. I brushed my fingers along the tab, a gesture closer to recognition than preparation. By dawn, my inbox had swollen with 32 new messages, pleading statements, furious outbursts, attempts at manipulation dressed in the grammar of desperation. My mother wrote first. "We didn't mean it. Things got out of hand. Please, talk to us, Diane." My father sent nothing but an attached invoice from the venue, his signature method of begging for help without admitting guilt. But the message that pulled a laugh from me came from the family group chat I'd been deleted from years ago. A cousin posted, "Diane's dramatic. Give her time. She always crawls back." I typed one line to the entire thread. A reminder. I own the crawl space. And all the keys have changed. The silence that followed was immediate, spotless. Later that day, an unexpected email appeared. Jeremy, my parents' accountant, requesting an urgent discussion about financial inconsistencies. The payments for their sacred beach condo in Greywater Reach, he explained, didn't trace back to any trust or estate. They originated from an unfamiliar LLC. Mine. When we spoke, his breath crackled faintly over the line, hesitant, uneasy. I confirmed ownership, then asked the question that had been waiting on my tongue for 3 years. "Did they report the condo as their asset on the annual filings?" A pause stretched, long and incriminating. "They listed it as an inherited gift from a private patron," he said eventually. "They never submitted documentation." So it wasn't only entitlement. It was engineered deceit. Status built on a property funded entirely by the daughter they dismissed as a beggar. Jeremy asked if I would provide a signed statement for the tax review. "Of course," I said. Then I called Sophia, my lawyer, the one person who never flinched at the word consequence. "How fast can we lock down every asset they've misrepresented?" I asked. 48 hours, she replied. "Possibly sooner." Exactly what I needed. By the next morning, I was in her office in Delmere Square. Minimalist, severe, efficient, just like her. At noon, she slid a neat stack of documents across the glossy surface, a cease and desist for slander and financial misuse, and a property reassignment form that cut through every flimsy, convenient verbal claim my parents had ever made. I pressed my name onto the signature line, the pen steady in my hand, and felt the shape of justice finally, solidify, cold, clean, irreversible. They'll claim you're posturing, Sophia murmured, eyes narrowing over the edge of her glasses. I let out a slow breath, almost a laugh. They made that assumption already. The banquet was my rebuttal. An hour later, the process server confirmed delivery. One knock, clean, unceremonious, and their glittering celebration collapsed into panic. The sound must have knifed straight through the ballroom's manufactured joy. That night, my mother left a voicemail drenched in tremors and half-swallowed sobs. You're ruining us over nothing. It was a misunderstanding. You always twist things. The church will talk. The neighbours will talk. Your father. Drama. The word they had sharpened over decades to keep me quiet while they drained me dry. I didn't press play a second time. Her voice could rot in its own echo. By morning, something far more satisfying arrived in my inbox. A message from my accountant. Subject: transfer complete. Title: reassigned. Final: irreversible. The beach condo, their prized token of social elevation, was excised from their financial persona like a diseased organ, taxes corrected, interest calculated, paperwork pristine. Minutes after, Sophia sent a single line. Every exit has been sealed. Then another, arriving like a spark igniting dry timber. If you want escalation, just say it. I didn't pause. Proceed. I want the entire family trust dissected, every dollar since 2017 followed to its grave. Because the insult hadn't been the word beggar. It was the decades of being their invisible support beam while they strutted on a stage paid for with my labour. They worshipped their own reflection, never noticing who held the mirror. The audit peeled back the years with surgical cruelty. $18,700 siphoned the week of my graduation, supposedly for emergency home repairs. Reality: Catherine's gleaming designer kitchen, $9,000 labelled education. Translation: a spa-laced concert weekend for the two of them. $34,000 reserved for Diane's future. A lie. It went toward my father's vintage Falcon, the car he once said would be my reward for loyalty. Like I was some obedient animal awaiting treats. They had drained the trust like a punctured artery, then dared to humiliate me publicly for being a burden. During a late call with Sophia, I asked, "Does this cross into criminal territory?" "It brushes the threshold," she replied. "Depends how deep you want the blade to go." Prison wasn't my ambition. Too abrupt. Too finite. I wanted something that lingered. Slow, corrective, unforgettable. So we filed for financial restitution, a complete statement of misused funds, formal recognition of trust abuse, 30 days for them to respond or negotiate. On day 6, the first fracture appeared. A message from my mother. "I'm scared, Diane. Don't destroy us over this. We can fix it. Please. No responsibility. No remorse. Only fear." Their truest dialect. My reply: "You're confusing destruction with illumination." The following morning, Catherine attempted her trademark performance. A pastel sunset photo, caption soaked in self-pity. "Some people only show up when money's involved. Blessed for those who stay." I didn't respond. Let her preach into the void. Algorithms aren't admissible in court. And now, court was exactly what they feared. On the 22nd day, their attorney finally contacted Sophia. His voice held that polished edge of someone trying to mask desperation. He offered a settlement. $50,000. No admission of wrongdoing. Gag orders for everyone. Sophia exhaled a quiet, amused breath. They're trying to smother the fire before the neighbours smell the smoke. But money was never the goal. I wanted the truth documented. In ink, in filings, in public record. A ledger cleaned of their lies. We refused. 3 days later, my father appeared at my office in Highgarden Tower, twisting the brim of his hat like a penitent, rehearsing a failing apology. He lingered at the threshold, my threshold, of the company he once dismissed as my cute little experiment. Behind me, 27 employees worked in quiet rhythm. A waiting list of clients filled the calendar. He stepped inside only when I didn't invite him. His shadow crossed my floor like someone approaching their own reckoning. "You've made your point," my father said at last, his voice rough as though the words scraped on their way out. "But you're dragging us toward ruin. Is that really what you want?" I studied him, the man who once raised a glass in a crowded dining room and declared Catherine the one with a future, leaving me invisible at the edge of the table. Something tightened in my chest. Not an explosion, just the steady pulse of an old fire kept alive beneath ash. "No," I answered. "This has nothing to do with triumph. I'm tired. Tired of bankrolling your comfort while being written out of the story you tell about yourselves." He inhaled sharply, preparing a justification worn smooth from years of repetition. I lifted a hand, stopping it before it left his throat. "You called me a beggar," I reminded him, voice low. "So I stopped donating, and the moment I did, every one of you remembered exactly whose money you relied on." No apology, no admission. Instead, he reached into his coat and slid a signed blank check across my desk, as if throwing currency at a fire might extinguish it. A white rectangle of surrender. I nudged it back, didn't even brush the corner. "This was never about the cash in your pocket," I said. "It's about the money you spent that wasn't yours to touch." He left with shoulders bent, walking as though the hallway had turned to wet cement beneath his feet. Moments later, my computer chimed. Trust, disbursement fraud, preliminary hearing. Set a date, a courtroom, a reckoning carved cleanly into the schedule. Word seeped through the extended family like a burst pipe. First a hiss, then a flood. Whispered theories, nervous speculation, the subtle panic of people accustomed to secrets staying buried. My cousin sent a text. "They didn't think you'd go through with it. They're freaking out, naturally." They had always treated my silence like a bottomless resource, something loyal, pliant, guaranteed. But now, I wasn't the cushion. I was the witness, and I possessed every ledger, every record, every quietly saved receipt. Sophia and I built the case with skeletal precision, timelines mapped to expenditures, withdrawals highlighted next to vacations, screenshots of every just this once request. All the invisible sacrifices spread across the table like forensic artifacts. The night before the hearing, my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen since that humiliating night at the hotel. "Catherine, if you show up tomorrow, I'll never forgive you. Not remorse, not accountability. A threat. Thin, petty, offered by someone who still believed her forgiveness carried weight." I let the message sit unopened. Some people don't seek reconciliation. They seek the return of the silence that protected them. The morning of the hearing, the courthouse air bit colder than expected, but my pulse held steady. I sat beside Sophia, whose restrained calm grounded the storm quietly churning beneath my ribs. Across the aisle, my parents sat stiff as stone, their attorney fiddling with his tie, glancing at the clock as if hoping time itself might intervene. When proceedings began, Sophia didn't argue. She illuminated. She displayed colour-coded charts, notarized contracts, time-stamped transfers, all glowing on the courtroom screen. Every dollar spent on the Sable Ridge condo traced back to my LLC. Every family expense exposed. Vacations, spa indulgences, the vintage car polished with my funds. Their lawyer attempted his predictable script: informal understandings, blurred expectations, overstatements, but even he seemed to hear the hollowness of his own defense. Then the judge looked at me. "Ms. Parker, what outcome are you seeking?" I rose. My hands remained still at my sides. "An accurate record," I said. "Nothing else. I want the truth preserved where it can't be rewritten." The judge gave a small, decisive nod. "Approved." Just like that, decades of carrying them, financially, emotionally, invisibly, were etched into the public record. No more buried sacrifices, no more polished lies, no more grand banquets where I was escorted out while chandeliers glittered overhead. This time, the light belonged to me. After the hearing, my parents didn't come toward me. No trembling apologies, no corner of the hall ambush. Not even a last desperate message blinking across my phone. Only silence, hollow and theatrical, the kind that settles after a play's final line, when the actors remove their costumes and the audience realizes the magic was never real. The ruling wasn't criminal, but it landed with undeniable force. Every misappropriated dollar was ordered back into the trust. The condo's title was legally and permanently shifted into my name. Any financial tether between us severed. Sophia called it clean justice. To me, it felt more like a balance sheet finally corrected after years of cooking the numbers. The weeks that followed were astonishingly calm. My phone, once the emergency lifeline for problems I never created, stayed motionless on my desk. No frantic calls, no guilt-wrapped requests, no urgent family matters that somehow always required my bank account. Then, one night, I noticed an envelope slipped beneath my door. No postage, no signature. Just a plain, unsettling piece of paper that carried its own quiet weight. Inside was a single photograph. The banquet. Everyone dressed in metallic blues and silvers, faces shining with rehearsed joy, glasses raised in collective self-celebration. And there, in the blurred background, me, mid-step, head turned, walking away from all of it. A moment of exile captured by accident. On the back, in the slanted handwriting I could recognize even in the dark. This was when everything broke. Catherine's writing. The same looping script she'd used on countless IOUs, each one promising repayment that never came. I held the image between my fingers, letting its edges bite lightly into my skin. Then I fed it into the shredder. Watching the strands fall felt peaceful. Not destruction, release, not loss, clarity. Because nothing broke. The truth simply rose to the surface. The illusion of family, glittering, delicate, upheld by my silence, finally collapsed under the weight of its own fabrication. When the dust settled, what I felt wasn't sorrow. It was oxygen, space, freedom. That same week, I opened a new folder on my desk. Parker Foundation. A scholarship fund for first-generation women clawing their way through school without safety nets, without backup plans, without families who cushion their failures or bankroll their futures. The seed money came from selling the condo. My condo. Not inherited, not gifted, not stolen in the shadows of a trust. 6 months have passed since the hearing. No calls from my parents. No passive-aggressive text chains from Catherine. Just a quiet, mutually understood distance. The only peace offering we were ever truly capable of giving each other. Some bonds don't require healing. Some must be cut cleanly enough for the wound to breathe at last. And for the first time in my life, I'm standing on something solid. A life paid for entirely by what they never gave me. My freedom.